in the news for June 20, 2025. A lot of 20s in there as well. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
And this is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD coming to you from Florida today.
Dude, we're traveling all over the place. I miss you already, Jeff. We were
I
together
know.
last Friday in New Orleans,
So fun.
downtown. It was so fun doing that for our 200th episode. That was great. So now I'm back home and you're traveling again on the road.
Which
You're in
is a flip
sunny
because
Florida. You got a seahorse behind you and everything.
that's right. You're the one that's always traveling, Brett. I usually stay in one place. So for me to be set up in a hotel environment, this is you're the expert in this, not me. So, but anyway, here we
Well,
go.
you
Happy
look
to be
good.
here.
You sound good. This is great. I'm glad that we're doing this because, man, I thought we had exhausted pretty much everything we could talk about with WWDC last week, Jeff. But no, there's now even more. But to be fair, now I feel like we have seen there's been a week, at least a week, maybe a couple of weeks now, that folks have gotten their hands on the developer beta of iOS 26 or the iPadOS 26. In fact, let's start there because we spent a good long time last week talking about the iPadOS 26 and how, frankly, I know both you and I were excited about what they were showing. They really spent a long time at WWDC keynote talking about what the changes that they're bringing to iPadOS 26. And now I feel like we have seen there are more people now. You linked to several articles today that are also enthusiastic about iPadOS 26. Like it's just really, it's really coming into something more of its own, even though I feel like we should have been able to say that several years ago. I mean, it's now, what we're talking about 15 years that we've had the iPad. And I feel like almost now, to some extent, it's like it really feels like what it should have been. Now, again, to be fair, a lot of processor changes, a lot of differences in size and screen sizes and everything, but just really, I don't know where you want to start with this. Federico, you had a great article that you linked to from there. Good interviews with Craig Federighi. That's what I was most interested in seeing from several folks over the last week here.
When Apple did the keynote last Monday, and they debuted some of the new features coming to the iPad, it was clear that there was a lot of new power user features here. And then over the week, Craig Federighi from Apple did a couple of interviews, and some of them were sort of surface. They're always interesting to hear the insiders at Apple talk about stuff. The one that Federico Viticci did that was particularly good because it got really deep into why Apple did what they did. And this is what I think is most interesting. Now that people are actually using some of the betas, the developer beta is out, and I think the public beta is actually out too. I'm not using either one of them, but you have a lot more people using it and kicking the tires on it. And we'll talk about the specifics of it in a second. But what really jumps out to me the most is sort of the big picture, the philosophy on it all. Because for a long time, when the iPad was released, for many years, the iPad was really just an iPhone with a bigger screen. I mean, literally, it was this exact same app store and everything else. And, developers would make it things that would account for that. But it was really, as if it was an iPhone. You're dealing with one app at one time for the most part and that sort of stuff. And then over time, people are like, I really like the iPad. I wish I could do more with it. And Apple slowly played around with that, but you still sort of felt that they were tepid, that they didn't want to go too close to the computer. They tried a bunch of things that allowed multiple windows on the screen at one time, and they were interesting. We used them, but it wasn't. You could just tell that it wasn't what they should be. And so somebody at Apple has decided, you know what? It's okay. We can take something that was first developed for the computer, decades ago, and we can do it on the iPad, and it's not going to make the iPad suddenly become a computer. It's going to still, the iPad is still a touch first device. You touch it, you hold it closer to you, you hold it in your hands. That's what makes the iPad special. And the fact that you can take an iPad, set it up with a keyboard and a trackpad, which is actually what I'm talking to you right now from my iPad in this formation.
Nice.
That's okay. It's still an iPad. It's just that you can have things like when you have an external pointer device. I've got my trackpad right here next to me. I can be more precise. And so why not give me a pointer? And why not give me the menus? And why not allow me to completely adjust my windows as much as I want? And I think that, and audio stuff changes too. There's so many things that Apple is doing. They're still never going to turn the iPad into a Mac because they really do have their separate purposes. But I think that they finally decided, take a breath. It's okay. You can do something that might be too advanced. And you know what? The thing about the new iPad is that I think you have to. I'm not using the beta, so I'm not positive on this, but I think it's something you turn on. I think if you don't flip the switch, your iPad stays in a very simple to use, one app at a time, full screen, the thing that so many people are comfortable doing with an iPad.
Right.
But I think that if you turn the setting on to allow the multiple windows and stuff like that, then it's like, go wild, enjoy it. You can have windows that are whatever size you want. You can even take, how on a computer, sometimes you'll take your window and you'll move it almost really completely off the screen. So like a very edge of it's on the screen, but most of it's like, in nowhere land off the screen. You can do that on the iPad and iPad 26. You have never been able to do that before. So it's things that like us, I say advanced users, but all I mean by advanced is somebody who knows how a computer works. We all
Right.
know how computers work. We can understand this. It's not going to make us too complicated. Sure, if you're going to give your grandmother an iPad, don't enable these features. Just let it do one app at a time features. But
Right.
for most people that travel, I always travel with my iPad, but I want it to be powerful enough to get stuff done. And I love that. I love the philosophy. And so again, going back to that interview of Craig Federighi, he talks about they went toward what is the essence of an iPad, what makes it
Mm-hmm.
special, what can we allow it to do that doesn't take away the iPad nature of it? There's often been years and years and years ago, Brett, there was an interview with Steve Jobs. It may have been with the Wall Street Journal, I forget, but he was on stage and he was talking about how is there a future of the Mac now that we have an iPhone and iPad? And I may have the details wrong, but it was something along the lines of, the iPhone is like the sports car, but we still need our Mac because you still need trucks. And I heard somebody this week
Right.
saying that,
That's
what
right.
Apple has announced is, sure, maybe the Mac is the truck, and we need those. People need trucks. People need the Macs, and maybe the iPhone is the sports car, but the iPad is the SUV. It's something you drive around, you feel comfortable with, but sometimes you want to put a whole bunch of stuff in it. You're going to Costco, you're going to load it up with groceries, you need that extra space, and that's okay. It's okay to be an SUV. Nobody's going to confuse it and say, oh, suddenly it's a truck. No, no, it's a different thing. It's an SUV. And so
Yeah.
I like that. So that was one of the really interesting to me is the philosophy. Beyond that, there's the actual using it. In fact, as we're sitting here right now, Brett, are you running the betas on any of your devices?
No, I am not.
Okay, I'm not either because I use my devices to get work done and I can't have the
Right.
bugs. But
Okay.
when you and I were together last week in New Orleans, you and I went to an event, and I think it was my brother-in-law was showing me that he has the beta installed in his phone, and I've now
Uh-huh.
seen it a couple of times in people's devices. I've seen it on both an iPhone and an iPad. And just to talk about the iPad for a second, I have played around with changing the window sizes and stuff like that. And Brett, I tell you, thumbs up. Like I'm so ready for
It's
this
good.
fall when I
Okay.
can use it
Okay.
myself. It is really,
Great.
really nice. Even the menus coming down and stuff like that, which you don't have to have an external device. Even if you're just holding an iPad, you can just swipe down from the top of the screen and you will see file, edit, view at the top of the window, just like you're used to on a computer. One thing that I was wondering
Ah,
about is the buttons that the red, yellow, green buttons. They're
yeah.
so
The
tiny.
stoplights.
The stoplights, exactly. If you're using a pointer device, then sure you can be very precise and you can get to it. But
Sure.
if you're using your finger, the buttons are so tiny that it would be really hard to precisely type each one. But the way it works is if you just tap on the entire spotlight area, it gets a little bit bigger. And then the red, yellow,
Okay.
and green buttons are
That's
more than big
brilliant.
enough for you to tap them. So like there's all these
Brilliant.
little features that they thought about, and I'm really ready. I mean, I'm going to hold off on putting the beta because I know that it's buggy and I depend upon my devices to get work done. But I'm very jealous of the people that have it installed already. So that is the iPad, I tell you.
Craig Federighi, when he took the stage at WWDC, said this. I've seen this quote several times. He said, "More windows, a pointier pointer, and a menu bar. Who would have thought?" We
Yeah.
have truly pulled off a mind-blowing release. But it was those three things that I think has grabbed everybody's attention. To underscore some of the things you're talking about. Um, some people are calling this multitasking, although I saw somebody take offense to that. Well, a nerdy offense to it, right? It's like the
Yeah.
multitasking actually is some there. We can come back to that in a moment. But really, it's sort of this windowing aspect. And this interview that you linked to from with Craig Federighi from Federico Viticci, who has been known as probably one of the best writers that has talked about how he has used an iPad, is
Right.
just so excited that now you have a lot more freedom in how you can do the windows. And really, that just comes down to a productivity component, I think, right?
Yep.
Because we do
Yep.
have this history with the iPad where we had uh, uh, what the is it the slide over is the one split screen, right? Split screen, we could have
Hmm.
two apps going on. Then you had slide over, and then you had stage manager, which was introduced maybe a year or two ago on some of that. I've kind of sort of maybe kind of used that in the way it goes, but now we have apparently stage manager is still there, but the split screen and slide over are not, fully replaced now by this completely customizable, like you have a full freedom to put as many windows as you want and move them around. And some of this is just what's showing. I've got a couple of videos here that Federico put in the website there. And it's just, I feel like it's that freedom that underscores what you were just saying too. It's like, you know what? It's okay. Like we can let the iPad do what it can do. And there's been arguments that, we're only scratching the surface of the capabilities even of like the processor that are in the iPads today, especially the M4 processor. And it's like, let people go nuts on this. It's okay. Somebody even said, but don't call it a Mac. There, I guess I am kind of calling it a Mac. I feel like if you want a touchscreen Mac, now you can get an iPad Pro, and if you don't want if you want that truck without the touchscreen, then you can still go for a Mac. But the lines are blurring a little bit. But I agree with you. I think that there's still the places and pieces and parts, and even Craig at the very end of this article from Federico, I thought it was so good. He was just talking about how Craig Federighi even sort of had an emotional attachment to his iPad,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's exactly the way I would say it. Like there are things that I know I will use my iPad and I will never be without it because I just am attached to using the iPad for that. And I'm just glad that I've got a few other additional options now too.
Let me correct one thing, or not correct, or just adjust one thing you said. You said that slide over and split screen are gone. Now, slide over is gone in iPadOS 26. Slide
Okay.
over is the
Okay.
thing where you could have a window sort of literally slide on top and then slide out of the
Just
way.
yeah.
And there was a little
Right.
tab for it. That's
Right.
sometimes was a useful feature. That's completely gone. Split screen, however, it's not really gone. It's there in a different way because
Yeah.
of the
I
new
see. There's some
iPadOS
pictures here.
26. If you take a window and you sort of fling it to the left, it will become just half on the left, and then you can
Yeah.
fling it to the right and it'll be half on the right, and that'll be sort of a split screen. But unlike in the past, you can then adjust precisely how much each one is, so it doesn't
Right.
have to be
Good point.
half half or one third two third. Moreover, they have options, and you're showing it right now on the screen, that
Yeah.
if you want to have three thin columns on the iPad, you can do that, it's a setup that you're not going to use very often, but there are some specific circumstances in which that's actually going to work. And then
Right.
likewise, you can have a 2x2, a 4 grid, which you're showing right now on the screen. And so these are things that we've never had before. And again, even with the big iPad, the screen, if you have four different screens, everything's really tiny. So that's only going to work in certain setups. But if you have a setup where you want multiple screens and you want to see them all at the same time, then you have that 3 at a time, 4 at a time option. Or you have the more traditional windowing option where they're just on top of each other and you tap to bring them up.
Right.
So it's infinite options. And that's the thing. It's, whatever works for, in specific circumstances, you're going to want one of those, and you're going to have that opportunity. So anyway, I'm very excited about that. Um, so that's the iPad. I do want to talk about one more thing though, which is the liquid glass. Is it okay if we move on to that a little bit?
Sure. Yes.
You
Let's
know,
go.
so I was very excited about liquid glass when I saw it in the keynote because it looked cool. It was interesting. I like the idea that it lets you use more of your screen at one time and stuff like that. And nowadays, so it's now been almost 2 weeks. Some people I am reading and following, they say liquid glass is fantastic. And some people are like, I'm really, really worried about this, like the ATP podcast, those people and stuff like that. And
Hmm.
one of the things that you and I both saw last weekend, I think we both saw it around the same time, is the interface. And the pushback that I heard from some people is that if you have buttons that are glass, like let's just say they're on the bottom of the iPhone screen, and you have words written on those buttons, because
Hmm.
things are flowing beneath the button and because it's see-through, it makes it hard to actually see the words. And some
Right.
people I've seen are like, oh, this is horrible because it reduces legibility. Now, John Gruber, I think you may have just been showing it on the screen. He has a
Yep.
comment of, guys, this is the first beta. Apple understands
Exactly.
this. They just barely got this out of the door. It's a brand new change. We've got all summer for them to fix it. Let's withhold judgment until we see what's actually released this fall.
Right.
So it's
Right.
still early. Do you have a gut? I mean, you and I were both looking at it at the same time last weekend. Now that you've seen it in person and you've thought about it, what do you think? Do you think it's going to be bad for legibility, or do you think it's going to work? What do you
No.
think?
They'll improve it. I mean, this
Hmm.
is one of the things we've seen this time and time again. When Apple releases these developer betas, we see how much things change over the next several months, Jeff. So honestly, I've pointed it out, and I remember we talked about this last week, but I don't have any concerns. Like, I know all of this is going to be addressed. There's
Hmm.
you know there's a certain limit, just kind of, I think, to your point, and what Gruber said as well. There's a limit that they can get to just internally, right? Without, because they keep it under wraps. It's secret. There's only so much you're going to be able to do with your internal
Hmm.
people. When you release it out into the public, there's all kinds of people that are going to be able to then access it and give complaints or give suggestions and comments. And we have seen, again, just over the years, Apple listens to all of that and they incorporate a lot of that. They make those changes. So I personally don't have any concerns. It's just, it will take some time, just like it always has. And by the time that we have some additional public betas, I mean, most of the time these betas go through 5 or 6, 7 iterations, right? Before we get to like the final, it may be into like September or something like that. So we've got plenty of time. I totally agree with John
Yeah.
Gruber on that.
And let's not forget that when iOS 7 came out with the flat design, a dozen years ago, they did improve it during the beta process. But you know what else they did? Even the version of iOS 7 that came out initially, like a year later, Apple did adjust it. And so if
Right.
they have gone too far, and if they haven't fixed, if there are some parts of it that still don't seem to work this fall, I hope they do address it. I will tell you that overall, and I know part of it's just because it's a shiny new coat of paint, but I mean, it's a new look. I think it's a fun look. I think it has some practical implications that are positive. I also think it just looks fresh and new. And so
That's it.
I'm
Right.
still optimistic for it, but I do understand the people that have told me, "Oh, Jeff, this is going to be horrible." I do understand where they're coming from, and we will just have to see, how it works.
I liked how John Gruber went back and rewatched Steve Jobs introducing the Aqua interface. You remember that? That was in like
Yeah,
2000. And I just
way,
thought that
yeah.
it was kind of cool how he was, kind of comparing that, because it was completely different at the time. And, there's that
Hmm.
whole aspect of like people don't like change. They're used to doing things. And I fall into that as well. Although, there are some folks that I think kind of come to it a little more naturally when it comes into the change, and they get used to it, and then everybody just kind of falls in line with it, because this is obviously the way they're going. I mean, it's not like they're going to roll anything back, and it's just a matter now of tweaking, I think, a lot of these things. And just like you referenced from John Gruber, like, legibility problems will be addressed, and I completely agree with that on there, which to me is exciting. I mean, I did overall like it. I do. I think that, a fresh design. It's time. We've seen this. The last big one was on iOS 7. I'm you know. It, just, I'm always excited when it's like a fresh coat of paint kind of on these things, and it's just a matter of now people kind of getting used to it. But after a few months of using it, then people are like, well, why wasn't it always like this? Like, isn't this the way it's always been? And so I have confidence that we'll get there for sure. Um, okay, a few more things in iOS 26. A couple of things you linked to today. The Reminders app. How about some specific changes coming in iOS 26 to the Reminders app, including the liquid glass design?
Yeah, the thing that most interested me about this is because I like the Reminders app. I do use it, although I use another app called Things too for my more sophisticated to-do projects, like my work stuff.
Yeah.
But Reminders is a great app. Reminders has a feature that if you use it for a grocery list, it will automatically sort of organize things into like different sections of the store and stuff like that. And it sounds like they're using AI to do more auto categorization of your items. And so we'll have to see how it works in practice. But I like the idea of, make things, keep things organized and tiny for me, but do it on your own, do it in a way that I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to spend too much of my own brain power doing it. And so I thought that was actually pretty cool. Some other features in there too. That was one that jumped out at me though. It's nice to see that the Reminders app is just such an app that so many people rely upon. I mean, I will always, if I'm just trying to remind myself, oh, don't forget on Wednesday afternoon, you got to pick up something, I will say,
Right.
hey, who, remind me on Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock to do such and such. And I love the
It
fact that I
works.
no longer need to think about it. And then it just reminds me, and I'm like, oh, yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. Just great.
I will say I've tried to use this several times from like I remember when the geofencing options came
Yeah.
into play. And so I'm driving around, but it's like when I get back home, I need to remember to, take the trash out or something. And I would say, hey, when I get back home, because it knows where my home address is, remind me to do this. And I have to tell you, I've lost confidence in that. Like it just either
Ah.
it wouldn't happen or it didn't come on, or it would be too late. Then I want it when I'm driving into into the garage or
Hmm.
when I walk into the house. And I don't know. I probably need to come back to it. It's just one of those things. Maybe I tried to use it, when it first came out, and I didn't
Hmm.
let it mature enough on that. But anyway, just always glad to see that some specific changes coming to specific apps in iOS 26, which is great. Okay, we're not going away from iOS 26 yet. Here's kind of another little bit of angle, which I think is great. I feel like so many times we talk about the changes from a user perspective, but I loved this little story that you linked to from John Voorhees at MacStories about his son, who apparently is a developer. Was it Ivan? Is that his name in here? That he picked. Oh, Finn. Sorry, Finn Voorhees, who has his own site. Well, John and Finn, his son, were talking in the car when he picked him up from one of the WWDC classes, apparently, about the speech to text tool, the engine that's basically getting built into iOS 26. That's probably the best way that I can describe it, Jeff. You can go into a little bit more detail, but I am thrilled about hearing that this speech API, text to speech API, or speech to text API, is apparently going to be lightning fast, even faster than the Whisper tools that I use for even transcribing our podcast, for example.
Yeah, I mean, the whole speech text back and forth has been something that's been Apple's been doing this for decades. I mean, gosh, when the original Mac was introduced in 1984, when Steve Jobs did the introduction, it was like a bag, and he took out the Mac to reveal what it looked like to everybody. And then on the
Yeah.
screen, a little face came up, and it was using text speech technology to say something like, I sure am happy to get out of that bag, all that sort of stuff. And
Right, right.
that going back and forth between text and speech is something Apple's been working on for years. They have an engine right now, and they've had it for years, that when you are speaking, it can then take your spoken words and put them into text.
Right.
But it's been a little simplistic. That type of technology is more important nowadays because with generative AI being so powerful, once you have words in text, the AI can like understand it and do stuff with it. And so this is a really important thing. And plus, we like talking to devices. It's nice just to tell my iPhone something with my voice instead of having to type. So this is all very important. One of the Whisper is a technology that I think you use it actually for our
I
podcast.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're familiar with it, to take the words that we speak to each other and to make a transcript so that if anybody ever wants to look at the transcript, they can. And also it means that if you search on the internet, you could
You can
word search and
right.
pull up. And Mac Whisper is very good. It's based on the Whisper technology. Apparently, the built-in tech that Apple has, and I don't know if we would call it AI or machine learning or whatever it is, but apparently it's getting substantially better. And the thing is, this is a core technology. And so John Voorhees, who's a former
Yeah.
attorney, his son, who's a developer, all developers of apps, they can use this technology for free without having to develop it themselves. And so anyone that's making an app and says, boy, it would
Great.
be nice if someone could speak and then I could turn it into words, they will now have an even better thing. So these are the sorts of announcements that, like, you hear the announcement at WWDC and it sounds interesting to you and me. But what's really
Right.
going to be cool is, 6 months, a year from now, when developers are doing cool things with it, and we're like, wow, this is an awesome app because it does XYZ, and
Absolutely.
XYZ is only possible because of this. So it's exciting.
Yeah, great stuff in there. Good story. I'm glad that you linked to that as well. Okay, last things on iOS 26. I think we touched upon some of these things last week, but there's only so much that Apple can squeeze into an hour and a half long presentation, and we always enjoy looking at all the features that we know are coming in iOS 26, but they didn't actually talk about too much. They may have shown it quickly on a screen, what we call the bento box of like all the different features in here. There are like 3 or 4 articles that you linked to today, which I just thought was great, like the hidden iOS 26 features that Apple didn't talk about at WWDC. This is fun to run through on some of this.
And there's so many. I mean, we can't even begin to
I
go through all of them. But I mean, for
right.
example, one of them is the clean camera lens reminder. So
I know. I
apparently,
love
if you're
this.
if
Yes.
you're about to take a picture and your iPhone can sense that there's some smudges or something on your lenses, it will actually tell you, whoa, 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 before you take this really important picture of, your wife and your daughter or whatever,
Right.
take your shirt and clean your darn lens, for goodness sakes, because there's a smudge on it. Like, that's a totally cool feature that's useful. And I
That's
mean,
awesome.
it's a minor feature, but I totally love it. And there's so many other in here that are, it's just
Let's
the
see. There's
list
this.
goes on and
This
on.
is. I don't remember how many he put in here. The Switch Safari tab bar. I know we talked about that just a little bit. Search in Apple Wallet. That's really cool. I'm excited about that.
There's HDR
Call.
screenshots. You take a
Yes.
screenshot, and if you have the new iPhones, you know that because of the HDR, you have these really rich colors and contrasts and stuff. Now I didn't even realize that my current screenshots were not in HDR, but apparently they will be this fall. It's like just these tiny little features. It's like, I'm glad that they have thought about all of this stuff.
That was
One of
Cult of
them,
Mac. You got it. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no. I was going to jump to another one. Was the 9 to 5 Mac, the Michael Burkhart. He has found 5 of his favorite features, and one of them that he
No, they
talked
bring
about
that up.
that I was talking about this when you were in town last weekend. You and I were talking a little bit with one of my brothers, and Auto Mix is one of the new features that they have coming out. We talked about this last week.
Yeah.
Auto Mix is the feature that you can have a song. So, like, if you're
There it
going
is.
from
Yeah.
one song to another song, the music can just continually go from one song to the next without having the pause between it, and it adjusts it to make sure like they start the right time. It's the sort of thing that a DJ would do in like a nightclub
A
to
DJ.
seamlessly
Exactly.
go. So there was a use case for this that I had never thought of. So one of my brothers is a marathon runner, right? He runs all the
Okay.
time in these races and stuff like that, and he was telling me that before he runs in races, I can imagine. I mean, I do not run marathons, but if I were, he says that he loves, like, it's totally important to have like a good music mix to sort of keep you, energized and stuff like that.
Sure.
And he has been
Absolutely.
doing for a while now. There are people that would make a great mix of music and upload it to YouTube. And then he would download that and get the audio portion. And that is what he would run to. And one of the things he said he likes about it is you don't want
Oh.
pauses between songs when you're running, because like it sort
Right.
of like gets you out of it. Like, you want to keep going.
Right.
And so he was
Absolutely.
joking that, like, now with Auto Mix, he's like, I can have my own playlist. I don't have to be downloading nonsense from YouTube. And I'm like, what
Oh.
an interesting feature. Like, I would never, it never even occurred to me. I was just thinking that it would be nice for, like, you're listening to music at a party or a house and it's just fun to go from one to the other. But like, this is a real, like, an actual real world use case. Like, if it matters to you to keep that energy level high, to not have a break between songs. So
Yeah.
it just shows, like, and Auto Mix is one of 100 bajillion features that are in the iOS 26. But like, every one of these features has the potential to be really important for different people. It's just so exciting. Oh,
That is great. I remember seeing the auto mix, and I don't think that they talked. Well, no, I think they mentioned it, but it was like really
they mentioned
briefly.
it.
I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, in the keynote. And like I said, I feel like that's sort of the DJ aspect of that. But auto mix is a nice word to use. To your point, on where Mac Rumors, Joe Rosenthal put together 100 new features coming in iOS 26. So if you can't get enough with me and Jeff talking about it, I'll make sure that the link is in here for 100 new features for iOS 26. Anyway, all exciting on that. I appreciate that. Let's the thing is, if we don't have an iPhone that's actually charged up, none of these features are going to mean anything. You had a couple of links today about charging your iPhone. The main thing that you talked about was one of your favorite chargers, what this is called, the Anchor 3-in-1 Cube with MagSafe. You've liked this so much that you convinced me. I bought it, and I actually traveled with it, just like you are. Look, you've got it in your hand right there. That is
Yeah.
so funny. That is
I keep
awesome.
I use this in my office all the time. I sit it down and my iPhone's on it, and I can see the time and I can see alerts. Someone texts me, I can see the text messages. I love it. And when I travel, even though this thing's a little heavy, but it's nice and compact, it sort of folds down. So for years now, I mean, I think I first linked to this many, many years ago, but I fold it down. And when I travel,
You did.
I'm sitting here in the hotel room, I plug this in, and then I can put my iPhone to charge overnight. I can put my AirPods to charge overnight. I've got an Apple Watch charger in here that can charge it. I love it. So I,
Yes.
I paid $150 for this. And the reason I linked to it this week, it's now on sale on Amazon for about $100, right? I forget how much it is, but it's
Yeah,
a
I'm trying to
substantial
get
discount.
to the
I think
cart.
it's
Yep,
103 or
103.
something. 103. So
Amazing.
if you're looking, if you don't have something to do standby mode with, this is a great product. I mean, I use it all the time. I really enjoy it, and you can pay 2/3 of what I paid for it. So great product.
I have to say it is heavy, but the reason it's
Yeah.
heavy is because it's sturdy. In other words, if you put that little flap up like you were just showing, Jeff, you put that flap up so that your phone sits on it, and you reviewed this back in, was it October 2023? So it's been a few years
Hmm.
you've been using this. But if once you put, your iPhone magnetizes to that little flip up little thing, and it's great. I travel with this because I like it so much. It's become the way that I use the iPhone for my alarm clock and everything. And then, like you said, in the morning when I get up, it's got that little Apple Watch charger on the side, and it's just really fantastic. I'm almost thinking about getting a second one now because I want to leave one in my suitcase when I travel, and then
Yeah.
I can have one because I know, because I saw you when I saw you last week. You actually have this on your desk at work, right?
That's right.
Because
Oh
this
yeah,
is
you were in
where
my
you
office.
set
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
you set your iPhone there, and you can look at that because that becomes like your clock and your calendar that you look at all the time,
Hmm. Very cool.
which is really nice. Not to be outdone, if you really want another Apple charger, this was a fun one you linked to today. Is this Spigen or Spigen? I never say
Spigen. I don't even know how you pronounce it. Yeah.
Spigen. Okay, that's a third way to say it. Well, if you liked the classic iMac, Spigen has done. This is so cute. I would want to get one of these. It looks like one of the old iMacs, but instead, no, it is actually an Apple Watch charger. Just really a cute little thing. And it looks like you actually have to supply apparently your own Apple Watch charging cable, and you can just pull that in. Oh, I like how they have the little hello on the background there. Just really cute. I mean, come on.
It's very
I mean,
cute and
Spigen,
nostalgic.
Spigen, Spigen, they've been around for a long time, so they're very trustworthy on this. And I just love the
Yeah.
fact you can tell they're Apple fans as well.
Yeah. In fact, when I first got an Apple Watch, when did the Apple Watch come out? Like 10 years ago or something like that.
Yes.
One of the very first stands that I had on my nightstand was made by the same company, Spigen, how you pronounce them.
Oh,
It was just
okay.
a simple little black thing that it was the same idea. You take your iPhone, the charger that comes with the Apple Watch, and you put it's just a place to hold it so you can set down. And this was long before Apple had what is it, the nightstand mode or whatever, where it shows you the time and
Yeah.
stuff. It was just very
Standby.
nice to have it.
Yeah.
Well, standby is the modern one, but I think that just for the Apple Watch alone, I think it was called nightstand
Oh,
mode. But
the Apple
regardless,
Watch. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, but my point is that they've been making these little, rubbery devices for a long time, and so this is a cute one that looks like the iMac. It reminds me of the late 1990s when the iMac came back and
So
saved
cool.
Apple. So very cool, very cute.
Love that. Something a little interesting you also linked to today. We've been hearing that a lot of the liquid glass we were just talking about, the interface is basically getting pulled from, or I guess we could maybe say influenced by the interface with the Vision Pro. But another thing that one of the things with Vision Pro that they were mentioning was that one of the new features coming is scrolling in the Vision Pro with your eyes. And I immediately think of like a web browser, right? But instead of like clicking and dragging down with, I know I got to use your Vision Pro, you would take your fingers and you would drag it down. You could
Mhm.
scroll with your eyes. Now, that sounds so cool, but then I'm trying to think from a practical standpoint, how is that going to work? But you had a really interesting article for Computer World about maybe some of the technologies that could be incorporated, or how even that the Vision Pro is going to influence other things you're going to be working with.
What Mike Elgin's really talking about in this is that in this world that we have, well, in fact, this is a great example because we're doing it right now. We're in this video conferencing world that we had been doing for years and years, and especially during COVID, we all sort of learned how to do it even more. And one of the problems is when you're talking to someone in real life, you make eye contact with them, and that's important. It's for establishing
Absolutely.
contact.
Right?
As I'm talking to you right now, Brett, for anyone watching the video version of this, I have my iPad down here. So if I want to see your face, like right now, I'm looking at your face. But even though I'm
Okay.
looking at my face, because I have to look down, you're looking at the top of my
You're
head.
looking down. Right.
I'm
That's
using an
right.
external camera on my iPad. And if I look here, now you can see my eyes, but I can't see you at all. And this is something that it's just sort of the problem of technology. We've all been on these Zoom calls, Microsoft Teams calls, whatever it is, where you're talking to someone and like you see the side of their face the whole time. And you know that they're looking at you because the camera's over
Right.
here. It's just a little off-putting. And so what Mike Elgin describes is the Apple Vision Pro and other devices from other companies are one of the advantages of them is that because of the way that they do the technology, you can just talk and I will look directly, like if I was wearing my Apple Vision Pro right now and I was using like the persona feature, you would see the persona of me and my eyes would be looking directly at you and I would be seeing in this virtual space you right here and I would be, and so it's he says it's actually nice to get back to the eye contact, because I could do that with my Apple Vision Pro, but because I'm using my iPad right now, I can either look down to look at you or up to
Right.
look at my camera. And it's just sort of an unfortunate side effect of the technology. And it would be nice if in the future tech help us to correct this. There's even things that I think you talked about some tech in here that like they will, and this is almost a little freaky, like the technology will adjust your eyeballs so that it looks like your eyeballs are looking at the camera, even if you're actually not. But it's an interesting problem. I'm sure you've noticed this
Nice.
before in your video conferences. Like you don't feel like, you feel just a little bit more disconnected because you can't see the person's eye. You,
That's
you know
right.
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not to even mention, I mean, go another step further is like the body language, because when we're talking with somebody in
Yeah.
person, you can see the whole body, et
And
cetera.
hands and everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I will just say I found this a little bit interesting. Like you're right, I was kind of going back to the Vision Pro because I don't know that we've had a device that can follow and track your eyes quite, at least from a consumer standpoint,
Right.
quite as good as what I have been. When I had the chance to use your Vision Pro, just to be able to see that, and I just get more excited about that. And I think it's obviously from the cameras that they're using and the angles, but um, and then that said, you mentioned the personas. Just quickly, another one of the things I've listened to 3 or 4 podcasts, Jeff, since WWDC. People have actually tried the developer beta of Vision OS 26 on the Vision Pro, and everybody has just been so excited of how good those personas are going to be looking now. And to your
They are
point that we're talking
fantastic.
about here, just the fact that that looks so much more 3D, I think that alone is going to help, even maybe from some of the meetings on there. But I mean, I just was getting so happy hearing people talking about the personas and the improvements that they're making on that as well. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, as you and I are talking here on June 20th, I don't think that the Vision OS public beta is out, but as soon as it comes out, and it's going to be soon, I am absolutely, that's the one I'm going to
You're on
install.
it.
I'm going to install that beta. I want it on my, and I cannot wait to try out that new persona feature. It looks really good.
Let's do a quick "Where You At" segment. We should have
Where
had
you
a "Where
at?
You At" segment. We were in New Orleans because that's where we were at. But this was a fun one again, involving AirTags. Wow, what a fun story! Apparently, this is over in the UK, so this comes from BBC. Um, this couple had a Jaguar SUV. It was stolen, and maybe you can. There was something in here about something that they had, like an immobility feature or something. Anyway, apparently the thieves were able to overcome that, but they were not able to overcome the AirTag. And the
Yeah, I
couple
mean,
called the police and said, our Jaguar has been stolen, but the police were kind of like, good luck. We'll try to get there when we can. So what do? Not something that we always recommend all the time, but they went and stole their Jaguar back. Now, again, they had the police. They let the police know what they were doing, but they were able to find it, track it down. They had to call Jaguar apparently to override the software that the thieves had messed up in there. But because of the
mhm.
AirTag, they were able to recover it back again. What a fun story.
Yeah, and that's the bizarre thing is like they were trying to protect the car. They had this technology that I've never seen it in person, but I understand the idea of it, that like when you get in the car, you can't start it until you type in a specific passcode. And you would think that would
Oh,
be
okay.
a pretty good deterrent for thieves. But
Sure.
thieves were sophisticated enough that they knew how to disable or get around that system. So they were able to bypass that and still steal the car. And yet,
Wow.
and yet they were foiled because the AirTag in it. And as you say, you're taking your life in your own hands if you're going to go after the criminals themselves. Obviously, they could have had a gun or could have been a bad situation. So it's a
Sure.
little dangerous. But whenever, I mean, they found their car, and for these people, it was the solution. They were able to get it back because of the AirTag. So the thousands and thousands of dollars of immobilization technology did not protect the Jaguar, but the $25 AirTag did.
Allowed
So
them to go back. They called it a bit of an adventure, but I
uh,
just thought that was cool. Again, they did notify the police, and apparently the police were, there to support them if they needed to, or something along those lines. But the car wasn't very far away, and they were able to get that back. Pretty interesting. Well, we saved the best for last. A brand new iPhone camera. So excited to announce this. All right. It is true. It's a camera from the iPhone internals, but it's not something that any of us are going to be able to enjoy anytime soon. Why don't you explain about this? Because it's kind of like this kind of segues into an in the show segment too, because it's all for the love of the F1 car.
Yes. So Apple's been working on this F1 movie, which has obviously been out in previews, and it comes out for real, I think, next weekend, actually. It's coming out very soon. And one of the things F1 cars, I mean, I've never really watched an F1 race, or at least not much, but I know that they have like tons of great car angles and stuff, and that includes special cameras that are actually on the cars. And apparently,
all over.
they're all over the cars, but some of those on car cameras, and you're showing sort of what they look like, or this is the Apple version, which is an imitation of it. It's got like this very aerodynamic shape to it, and it fits on the
Right.
car. And apparently, it's good enough for a live broadcast of, you want to see from the car's angles and feel like you're at the car. But if you're watching a movie on a big IMAX screen, if you were to take that video quality and bring it all the way up to an IMAX screen, it would look sort of fuzzy. And so Apple's like, we have to replace this with a better camera. And the problem is the F1 people are like, well, if you're going to be using F1 cars on F1 tracks, you can't just put a different camera on there because the aerodynamics will be off and everything else. So Apple had to take the superior camera that's in an iPhone and fit it into the exact same shape and weight of the current cameras so that it would be safe from F1 standpoint. And so that's what they did. So this is a very specialized version of an iPhone. Also, they had to remove all the radios from it because apparently you can't have radios because there's also restrictions there. But it's just sort of funny that like if Warner Brothers is making a movie, they can do, there's certain things that they can do. But when Apple makes a movie, like you need a special kind of technology for the movie. It's like, oh, okay, we'll just get somebody in one of our labs to make one of those and we'll use it for the movie. So I thought that was really, really cute. I have to admit that the buzz that I'm seeing on this F1 movie, people say it's a really good movie. I don't go to the movies that often. I love watching movies on my TV at home and stuff like that, or my nice big TV, or on my Vision Pro. But I think this is one that I'm going to go to the theater for because it looks like it's going to be a fun movie. And we have a theater in New Orleans that's got an IMAX screen, and I think this movie, yeah, I think it might look really good on an IMAX screen. So my son's into cars. He and I might have to go check this one out. Yeah,
so I'll talk about the IMAX. I thought you would just wait until it came out for the Vision Pro. I mean, you're definitely
that would be great.
Yeah,
that would be great. And I'm sure it'll be amazing on the Vision Pro. Yeah, but this one, it's going to be such an adrenaline rush. It might be one you want to be in a theater for with all the people and stuff like that. So that'll be fun. But if I did want to watch it on my Vision, well, go ahead and then I'll do my transition.
I was just saying, like, I've heard people talking about this. This almost seems like similar to the way that Apple has incorporated soccer. Like everybody got so excited about soccer or football, right? So, first of all, with Ted Lasso, people were getting into that. And then Apple gets the rights to show MLS games, right?
Right.
I feel like this is another kind of an angle, Jeff. I don't know if this is intentional on Apple's part. I kind of think that it kind of be. F1 racing is not one of the most popular sports in America, but the fact that they are going all in, obviously, on F1. I mean, they even had Craig Federighi in Air Force One, doing the laps around the Cupertino, the loop. I mean, they're going all in, and they're obviously making a huge splash with this. Is there something maybe coming eventually with like they're going to get the rights to show F1 racing maybe with Apple TV Plus? Purely conjecture, but it would not surprise me in the least. It's amazing. Like there's so many people like you and I that don't really probably have any interest in F1 racing. I'm thinking about going to an IMAX theater and watching this. I mean, that's just something, pretty amazing that Apple is drumming up here.
It would not surprise me in the least. Apple loves the idea of live sports. I heard somebody say, and again, I don't watch them, but my understanding is that the F1 races are all done in Europe, which means that from the time standpoint, at least for American viewers, they would be it would be they're not the best times. It's not like it's going to be prime time in America because it's 7 hours, 8 hours ahead in Europe or whatever it is. So there's that issue. But Apple is definitely looking for things that they can buy the rights to. They've got the MLS soccer rights in the United States. I could totally see them. I mean, they are a global company. I could totally see them saying, we're going to purchase the F1 rights. And you're right. I mean, because this big movie is coming out, maybe that's the only explanation. But Apple seems to be so in love with F1 right now. I agree with you, Brett. I do wonder if there's more there that we don't know about yet, and that maybe in a year or two they will somehow acquire the worldwide rights for that. And so consistent with that, this is what I was about to say, and I haven't had a chance to look at this yet because since I'm traveling right now, I sometimes take my Vision Pro when I travel. I didn't take it this time, and but I wish I had now because apparently Apple has just released an immersive Vision Pro movie that is Brad Pitt in an F1. I guess they put one of their special 3D cameras in there. And so from this article from Mike Hurley on his new website, The Enthusiast, he says that like when you're watching the immersive video, you could like turn your head and you can see, hello, Brad Pitt, how you doing over there? And you can turn your head over there and you can see like the cars. So I will be watching as soon as I get home from my trip. I will be home watching this one, but I haven't seen it yet.
You're gonna sit in the cockpit with Brad Pitt.
Exactly.
Car.
As one does, you know.
Fantastic. That's great. I love it. All right, good. In the know. How about a couple of gadgets? You had a gadget. You inspired me. I'm gonna do a flashlight. Not that crazy fun, but so necessary. There's a company called ThruNite, ThruNite, ThruNite. I think they're based out of China, so hopefully no tariff issues or anything going on there. But I don't think so because it's still a pretty good price now. There's different colors. This is a little tiny flashlight. In fact, let me bring up the Amazon page here because that's probably what I'll link to there. It's like almost 3.5 inches long. So I've got my little ThruNite Saber is what this is called.
Oh, it's a cute little thing. Yeah.
It is a cute little thing. So when I do travel or I love having sort of a pocket-sized flashlight. And this probably maybe a little bit bigger than I would actually carry in my pocket. But especially when I'm traveling or going anywhere, I just like to have a good, reliable flashlight that I can put in my pocket and have out. And this I like. The other thing about there's so many pocket flashlights out there. But I find so often, Jeff, that they're fairly complicated. Like you've got to click it 3 times to get to, a low beam and then click it again 3 times to get to a high beam, or then it's like goes through a flashing thing. Well, this I love because it's so simple. This is the ThruNite Saber that if you press it once, you get a low beam. And if you click it off and you press it on again, you get a high beam. You click it off and you press it again, your low beam. Click it off, click it again, your high beam. I just like that simplicity on there. In fact, you don't even have to click the button all the way down. You can just hold it down a little bit and it will come on, for as long as you need it. And it's pretty good. I feel like I forget the actual lumens that it goes to. I think the low beam is what I call this, or the low end of it is like 24 lumens, and then the high beam I feel like is maybe 300 and something lumens. It says 659 here, but I think you have to have a specific kind of a battery on this. It's 3.8 inches long, 3.8 inches long. Very small, fits in my hand very well, and it's very sturdy. I like that. The fact that I don't want it to be plasticky and scraped. This is like metal body. There's just one AA battery that goes into it. And interesting enough, they sent the battery that comes with it is actually a rechargeable AA battery. I don't know if you've seen these before, but they actually send this. You can use any AA battery, but it looks like a AA battery, but there's a little USB-C port at the top of this.
I've never seen that before.
AA battery in here, and so I just recharge the battery. I don't have to recharge the actual flashlight. And I know there's a lot of rechargeable flashlights, but in my mind, I've always said, well, what if you're not near, you're camping or something, and you don't actually have a power port to actually charge it, but you can probably carry a couple of extra AA batteries. And that's one of the reasons I like this is I like to make sure that wherever I'm going, I don't have to worry about charging the flashlight. I can just always put in a AA battery in that. And for me, that kind of gives me a little bit of solace in working with that. So anyway, that's my little gadget. This is the ThruNite Saber 659. But if you just go and Google ThruNite, ThruNite Saber, on the ThruNite's website, it's like $19, but you can get it on Amazon for $15.99. Now that's the black color.
Price.
If you wanted some additional colors, then it's a little bit more expensive. But that's my pick for the day, Jeff. Is ThruNite Saber little handheld flashlight.
That is a fun little gadget. I like it. My pick today is also a gadget. And when I was thinking about gadgets, this is what's in front of me. This is a gadget that I have been using for a long time now, the HyperDrive 6-in-1. Yeah. I bought it. I forget originally what I linked to it is it was many, many, many years ago. It was originally a Kickstarter thing, and then they sell it. And sometimes I buy a gadget because they look sort of fun and I play with it. And then, it goes wherever it goes. But there are some gadgets that like I continuously use over and over again for years and years. And this is one of those. So it's definitely something that I recommend.
Okay.
When the iPad, so here's the thing, when the iPad first had a USB-C port, we knew that would allow us to have a lot more functionality of, plug things in. And so this is something that it made to fit. It fits right on the side of the iPad. I've got mine on the side of my iPad right
Yeah,
now.
I see
You just
that.
stick it in there and it gives you all of the ports you might possibly want. You have a regular USB port. You have an SD card slot. You have another USB-C, so you could plug that in and continue to charge your iPad even as it's charged. You have HDMI out, which I can use for giving presentations. You have a what is it called? Like if you wanted to plug in a pair of headphones, whatever that little port thing is
Yeah,
called,
the 3.5 millimeter, the audio
that
jack is what they call
the
it.
audio jack, exactly. You have an audio jack. Anything that you might want is right there on it. And the
Nice.
device itself is so tiny. So I keep that in my little bag. It's always with me no matter where I am. And if I ever have a need, it's like, oh, I need to hook up a bunch of stuff to my iPad. I want to hook up some external drives, but they're USB, not USB-C, whatever. I just put this thing on it. And so as I'm sitting here talking to you right now, Brett, the camera that I'm using is just like a Logitech camera because I thought the quality might be a little bit higher and I have like a little tripod sitting on top
Yeah.
of the ice computer in my hotel room here, but just to like get a good angle to look at you. So I have this external camera, but my camera is USB-C. And so I needed a way to get that connected to my iPad.
Ah.
So I just put the little HyperDrive on there. I plug in the USB to the side. I've also got the USB to the side. I've got a USB-C cord with power that's going over here to an outlet so I can make
Uh-huh.
sure that my iPad stays charged. But it's just such a virtual of it's so useful. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now the version that I bought, which I did a review on, and I think I have a link to you somewhere there many
I
years
do. Yep.
ago.
Yeah, here it
What year
comes.
did I do that review? It was back in
2019.
so, I mean, I've been using
2019,
this
Jeff.
thing for
Wow.
6 years now. So that version, they don't sell that one anymore. What they now sell is a more advanced
Oh
version that you were just showing on
yeah.
Amazon and I haven't tried this one, but the more advanced version, it's all the features that mine has, plus on the top of it, which for mine is just a flat
Oh, I
surface.
love that.
For this one,
Yes.
they actually have controls, play, pause, and whatever else. And so that's
Yeah.
just nice if you're using your
Left and
iPad
back.
to watch a
Yeah.
movie. And if you just want to very quickly play pause, you can do it with an actual physical button, which I'm sure that
Oh.
would be nice. If I was buying one today, of course I would buy this version because it's the same price and has more features. So it's even better than the one that I have, but the one that I have is great. If you want to have it's the jack of all trades device, just throw that in your briefcase, in your bag, your purse, whatever. And then anytime you need to hook something up to your iPad, this is going to have you
Yeah.
covered. So I've just, I've been using it consistently whenever I travel, whenever I'm in my office. I use it all the time. Big thumbs up from me.
I might have to look into this. So two things quickly. I travel with a USB hub like this, right? It's got like the little dongle cable on
Sure,
there, and
sure.
that works great for either my MacBook, my Mac laptop, or my iPad. But I like the fact that it just shoves up right up against the
That
side
is
of
the
your
key part.
iPad.
Right,
And that's
right.
a big deal that it goes anywhere. And
Because
then
and
I
can,
got to
can I
tell
just
you,
address that, Brett?
yeah,
Just
go
on that
ahead.
one feature, I've
Yeah,
had those before. I've tried those, but like right now, my iPad is sort of like in I'm in a case that have an external keyboard, and my iPad is sort of sitting up an angle like a laptop
right.
would.
Of
And so
course.
with that hole on the side, if I used the sort of thing that you were describing, it would be hanging off the side, dangling off. The weight
Right.
would pull it. It would
Exactly.
come out, and this hyper thing, this device hyperdrive that is flush to the side of the iPad,
Flush.
that
Yeah.
it doesn't just look good. That's actually a useful feature. So anyway, go ahead, but that's why
I
I love it.
like that. Well, I'm just going to tell you the second thing is I remember looking at your review from 2019. It did not have those what they call the media control buttons on there, but I love that because I'll tell you on my Mac laptop, my MacBook Pro, in the function keys F7, F8, and F9
Right.
is exactly the same things. It's like the pause play button is F8, and then the back button is F7, and the next song button is F9. And I love those buttons on my MacBook Pro because if I'm listening to Spotify or Apple Music or frankly any kind of audio coming out, I can control it just by using those buttons, even if it's playing in the background. Like if Spotify isn't in the front
Right.
and center, I can use those buttons. And I miss that every time that I'm working on my iPad, because if I want to pause my Spotify that I'm playing in the background of my iPad, at least right now, then I have to like go and bring Spotify to the forefront and tap the pause button. And just the fact that I can have those buttons on that little on this HyperDrive on the side, that's fantastic. I love that. I might have to look into investing into this now. I've seen these, and sometimes I do feel like I don't know if I want something on the side of my iPad, but you've convinced me. I like the way you're talking about it now. And it can be a little bit more sturdy than maybe just having one of these things like that dangle. And I always get nervous because it's like, if it's dangling off the side like that, is it like pulling from the USB port on the bottom of my iPad? I don't want to have to worry about that. Great pick on that. I like that. Good stuff there. Well, lots of iOS 26, lots of fun gadgets we're talking about. More to talk about even next week. My friend, thanks as always, Jeff, and we'll talk with you next week.
Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.